But watch your paddle as he pushes this ball. I'm going frame by frame. Watch your paddle. Watch what your paddle does. See that? That is why that shot is so sloppy. It had nothing to do with shot selection. It had nothing to do with the technique on the push or anything like that. You cheated and guessed on your forehand. The ball came to your backhand. You were not watching, and so you got beat. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Louie here, and welcome to a brand new VOD review. Last week, we took a look at a match from Nemo, which is up on my channel. It's the most recent VOD review. And today, we are going to be taking a look at the exact same match, but we're going to be doing it from Kipper's perspective, who was the opponent last week. So this should be super interesting, getting a chance to look at the same match from two different point of views. So hopefully this is an interesting video and something that is useful for everybody. Now, before I read through this context, I do have kind of a quick comment I would like to make on my most recent one, Nemo's video. Now, if you remember, the very first point, not the first point, but like the point that I used as my highlight point, as my coming up point, Nemo got a ball that he tried to loop and he missed the loop. And I had some comments on basically what went wrong here. And most people understood what I was saying, but I had a couple people comment mentioning that basically you have to loop every single long ball, no matter what, no exceptions whatsoever. And the fact that I said that it was okay to push here was a crime against humanity, and you should never, ever, ever, ever push a ball that can be hit, no exceptions whatsoever. And I want to explain why that's not always 100% correct. Firstly, something really important is the advice that I give for one person is tailored to that person specifically. So just because I'm giving one person specific advice on you need to loop more, you need to push this ball, whatever I'm saying, that advice applies to them. It doesn't necessarily mean that exact same advice also applies to you, because everyone's at a different level. Everyone has different things they're good at and different weaknesses. Everyone has different things they need to work on to improve. So it's always situational in regard to what I'm saying. And that's not to say that the videos can't be helpful to everyone, because if you notice that you have a lot of the same patterns as whoever I'm reviewing, then you can take some of the advice. But just keep in mind, firstly, a lot of the advice I give is tailored to one person, so it doesn't always apply to everyone the same. But second, when it comes to pushing, if you get... There's a difference between pushing wars where you push and they push and you push and they push and none of you are hitting, and doing one push to get a very easy guaranteed loop. And you have to understand that there's nothing wrong with doing one good push if you're getting a guaranteed predictable ball. And so it's always situational. So for example, like ignoring what's happening here, let's say from pattern recognition, you know that if you push right here, your opponent always pushes long to your forehand and gives you an easy ball, and you're not scared to loop, so it's not an issue of being scared to loop. Well, if you got a ball that was slightly long, but maybe was going to come short or half long or just not very comfortable to loop on your forehand, there's absolutely nothing wrong with pushing that first ball here and then getting the very easy long ball, which you can loop cross court for a winner. And there's a difference between that and getting the long ball and pushing because you're scared to loop. If you're pushing because you're scared to loop, and it's just that you don't have the shots in your arsenal, so you're pushing, and then they push back, and you're pushing again, and they push back, and you're pushing again, and basically just scared to loop or hoping that they make a mistake, then my notes are going to be, you need to loop every single long ball, no exceptions, no matter what. And if I see you push a single long ball, you're going to get a strike. But if you're at a point where you're looping the long balls and you're not scared of the loop, that's when the shot selection comes into play a little bit more, and you can pick your shots a little bit more, because there's nothing wrong with exploiting something to get a guaranteed loop so long as you're actually going to loop that ball. And then on top of that, once you get to a really, really advanced level, if you know that their loop is bad and you have a good counter loop, there's also, let's say you get a maybe long ball to your backhand, maybe you can loop it, maybe you can't, who knows, who cares, but you know, for example, that you can push long to the forehand and they don't think, so they just loop cross court with low quality every time, and you know your counter loop is really good. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, show me what you got, loop this ball, and I'm going to counter loop. So just wanted to reiterate that there's nuance, and it's not one size fits all, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with a push so long as that push has purpose. But with that out of the way, Kipper uses the same equipment as Nemo. Same thing with the ratings, not really sure. I estimated that Nemo's somewhere between 1200 and 1500. I don't think he's under 1200, just based on the match review from last time. But anyway, so Kipper started playing a year and a half ago, trying to maintain one training session and one group session per week. It's a very solid level of practice as well. Took 5 private lessons to make my technique more solid, but can't afford any more of them. And this is part of the reason I've had many people now ask me whether I will ever basically do a paid private VOD review where they can skip the line, and I don't upload it, I just like send it to them. And I've done these in the past, but I've decided, at least for now, that I am not going to be doing any more paid VOD reviews, because part of the reason I'm doing this is for people who can't necessarily afford to spend tons of money on private lessons but still want quality advice. So anyway, my goal is to start playing in local tournaments and leagues within a year. I really want to nail down my stance and positioning, especially for my forehand side, as many of my forehand loops feel quite awkward. I also wish to add a lot of speed and spin to my loops from both sides. One major issue is that whenever a feisty back and forth begins, I begin blocking or I tend to block instead of counterattacking, which I believe is also related to incorrect stance and positioning. As can be easily observed, the main weakness of my game is the serve, which I'm still working on since it is a higher priority for me to get the foundations right first. This is a little bit backward. I'm still, of course, going to look at all of your game, but table tennis is 80% serve and serve return, so spend time on your serve. It can carry you up to like 1800. Just the serve and serve return alone can carry you over 1800. It's such an important part of your game, it can't be overlooked. Anyway, same match as last time. So our protagonist is the player on the close side of the table with the glasses. Again, we reviewed Nemo's match last time, and with that, I hope you all enjoy the video. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's see what we got. That's fine. Quick comment in regard to your ready position. Just take a look at your feet as you are finishing your serve here. You see how you kind of have like 3 steps as you're getting into your ready position, and you're not really bouncing into your ready position, you're doing a slow walk, and then again here you do like 1, 2, 3 steps, and then you bounce, and then you get ready for the forehand, and the forehand's actually really good. You're a little bit tense, like your wrist is a little high, but this looks more like you just don't have perfect muscle memory yet, but the fundamentals here are really good. And then he gives you a pretty high quality ball. At a really high level, this would need to be countered, but really any anyone under 2200, there's nothing wrong with just blocking this ball. But you have to be smart with the blocks. You don't want to just put your paddle in the way. It's almost like pushing. You don't want to block with no purpose. If you're going to block to set something up. Block really wide so that he gives you a weak ball and then you can counter loop. Or block really deep to the backhand to get him out of position and change to a backhand to backhand rally. You don't want to just stick your paddle in the way because then you're allowing him to continue looping. Really the main comment there. Overall, not bad, just a little bit slow. And then your footwork picks up after the ready position, but it's a little bit slow coming from the serve. And you can see, just as a contrast, your friend's footwork is very bouncy coming out of ready position. That's what you want. Okay, so this is a ball that needs to be hit. Everything I talked about at the beginning of the video aside, this is a very long serve to the forehand, and the idea you want to have on the serve return is always, for 99% of circumstances, you want to expect the ball long, so you should be ready for the ball. That's a little bit too tight. You want to expect the ball to be coming to this area of the table, and then react if the ball comes to this area of the table. And the reason for that is, if you're ready to loop and the ball comes long, you will be able to loop if you want to with no issues because you're mentally prepared for the shot. So it's kind of like, oh, I was expecting this already. There's no hesitation. It's what your plan A was to begin with, and you just loop it and it'll be really easy. But if you decide that you do want to push, you can push with absolutely no problem because it's very easy to go from a loop to just open your racket and push it forwards and play a push. But if you are ready for push and then at the last second decide that you want to loop, it's going to be very, very difficult because it's a mental thing more than a physical thing. But it's very, very hard to adjust mentally from being passive to being aggressive and having an active mindset. So always ready to loop. If you need to push, then react and push. But the first idea should be loop, and you'll have a very easy time picking up that these balls are long and looping them. But yeah, that one you do want to loop that, especially because it has some side spin on it. And it's long. It's just not a very stable ball to push. Yeah, that's fine. Like it sounds really, really basic, but your rally is actually fine for the most part here, especially the backhand. Like the forehand, okay, your wrist is too high. The backhand here looks incredible. I mean, your elbow was fantastic on that ball. Really, really good. And then the forehand, he gives you quality, and so you block fine. And again, your wrist is a little bit too high on the block. But the whole issue with this point stems from the serve. And I know you said you want to master the other parts of your game, but they look solid already. We just need to clean up this serve, because this is a very, very long topspin serve right into the opponent's forehand. It doesn't matter if you're Ma Long. If Ma Long gives this serve to anybody over 2200, even the 2200 will win the point because it's that loose of a serve. It doesn't matter how good you are. A high enough quality loop is going to win that point. That's a much better serve. That's good contact. That's fine. That's fine. That's not bad at all. That was a tough point to win. So you did a good job there, staying calm and kind of being scrappy. Yeah, that's fine. Just your forehand does have an issue with the wrist. If this is the handle of your paddle, I'm a terrible artist, and this is the head. This is where you should be as you start the forehand. Even when you're blocking, this is where your paddle should be. you tend to keep your paddle like this and then push it forwards from this elevated position. So just make sure, basically just use the tip of your racket as a guide. If you are holding your paddle out for a forehand, the tip of your racket should be pointing completely to your right, toward whatever is on your right. It should not be pointing up toward the ceiling. If it is pointing up toward the ceiling, that's a sign that your wrist has popped up, which you really, really want to avoid on the forehand. You lose a lot of spin and a lot of stability doing that. Alright, so this right here is a major issue with priorities. It's very subtle, but I'm gonna put it in slow motion and then you'll see it and you'll hopefully have a light bulb moment. Let's break this point down in slow motion. He mishits the surf. Like he wasn't intending to contact it like that, so it was weird. You push the ball fine. But watch your paddle as he pushes this ball. I'm going frame by frame. Watch your paddle. Watch what your paddle does. See that? That is why that shot is so sloppy. It had nothing to do with shot selection. It had nothing to do with the technique on the push or anything like that. You cheated and guessed on your forehand. The ball came to your backhand, you were not watching, and so you got beat. And there's a couple solutions to this problem. There's two ways to approach this problem in terms of how to fix it. Neither is objectively like the correct or incorrect answer. In fact, sometimes you'll use one approach, sometimes you'll use the other approach and switch back between them, but most of the time you'll have a preference for one or the other. Basically, the first approach, just like how I said, you should always expect the ball long and then react if the ball comes short. You should also expect the ball to your backhand and react if the ball comes to your forehand. And the reason for that is it's very, very easy if you're set up for a backhand to move to your right, bring your paddle out, and still play a very, very strong forehand. But it is very difficult to have your paddle already extended and out for your forehand, right here, and then bring it back across your body to play a backhand if the ball comes there. This is almost impossible. So that's the first solution. The second solution is to simply stay in your ready position longer, and you have to watch like a hawk. You have to be laser focused on his paddle and don't commit to either shot until you are 100% sure of where the ball is going. And that's not to say that with the first option you now have an excuse not to watch. You always want to watch, but with the first option, if you have a lapse in concentration and for whatever reason you just weren't focused, didn't see where he hit the ball or how he hit the ball, you at least are still going to be fine. You have an out because if the ball does happen to come to your backhand, you were already expecting it there, even if you missed exactly what he did. And if it comes to the forehand, it's very easy to react. But the second option is going to give you an opportunity to play a better forehand. And again, there's no objective correct answer. I am a pretty big backhand player, so I love the first option. There's a lot of really high level, up to the professional level, who use the first option. There's also professionals that use the second option. And again, you can switch back and forth between these two approaches depending on the situation. But normally you'll want to have a preference for one or the other. We were actually talking about this in Discord. So there was a player with a similar issue. And yeah, this is what I mentioned. Basically, you want to expect backhand and react to forehand. Obviously, ideally, you want to just watch, but there's times when you're not going to watch because that's just human nature, unless you are insanely focused and locked in and have absolutely no lapse in concentration. But even if you have that lapse in concentration, it's very, very easy if you're expecting a backhand to react. Move to your right, extend your arm out, and play a quick forehand. Although to do this with good quality, you have to be a very hard worker, and it's very demanding on your legs and body. But it's almost impossible, like I mentioned, even with perfect movement, to expect a forehand, already have your paddle extended, and then reach back to play your backhand. And then David, who is a very, very, very strong player as well, talked about the second option, which is, yeah, basically staying in ready position longer and only starting to swing when you 100% know where the ball will land. And he mentions the nuance that, good players will switch between the two based on where they expect. But again, to do this, it's not just staying in ready position, but you have to watch like a hawk. So when the ball is traveling from and this is just a general thing, when the ball is traveling from your opponent's racket to you, you want to keep your eye on the ball and you want to watch the ball hit your paddle. The second that the ball has hit your paddle and is now moving back towards your opponent, you don't want to be watching the ball still. You actually want to be watching your opponent's paddle to see what he's doing. And that's what I mean by watching like a hawk. Laser focused on exactly what they're doing. Because if you can get in the habit of doing this every time, you will always know where the ball is going before they make contact. Basically, the issue with this point was you guessed forehand without any anticipation and reacted to backhand. Personally, if it were me, and the way I normally approach it is I'm expecting backhand, ready for backhand, still watching, of course, but mentally and physically ready for backhand, and then I move out and react to the forehand. And you won the point there, but you got away with it when you shouldn't have. That's fine. Your wrist is, again, popping up. Just watch it. Look at your wrist. So, just keep that wrist down on the forehand, and the shot quality is going to be a lot higher. Now, I haven't seen you go for a backhand loop yet, so if you don't have the shot yet, in the match, pushing is fine until you develop it. So yeah, it's fine, because I don't know whether or not you have a backhand loop. That's good. That's good. Solid. And we are on to game 2. Your backhand is really good. I mean, you missed there. Because your fundamentals on the backhand are good, I think that... I mean, that first shot was a little off. Like, but when you do it right, your motion is good. If you could develop a backhand loop, you're going to be a very strong backhand player. Here you are very, very late on this ball. Timing. Just remember, anytime you are looping a ball against underspin, you want to take it top of the bounce. So you should be making contact right here. This is at the latest here. Even that's too late. This is where you should be making contact with the ball already. It's at its highest point. It'll be easy to get it over the net. It'll be nice and stable. But you take a very big backswing. And then as a result, you are hitting the ball under the table, somewhere down here. And so it's just not a very stable shot. And then on top of that, you took a big backswing, but you didn't finish. If you're going to take a big backswing, you have to follow through. You have to finish your form all the way. Because otherwise, what's the point of the big backswing? You could have done that size swing from a much higher starting position. Which this also just comes with experience, because maybe you were a little bit slow reacting to where he pushed. So just, again, make sure you're watching. Yeah, serves need a lot of work. They're not bad. They're getting you into the point. Same mistake, same mistake. You're very, very late on the loop. So I'll give you a drill in your notes to work on that because it's just a fundamentals issue. It's fine. He mishit his serve again. Yeah, you're very focused on the counter loop when it's not necessary. Like, is having a counter loop good? Yes, but it's like you've got the cart before the horse. You are trying to counter loop when you don't have the fundamentals, and really it's one of those things like the counter loop should be there for when everything else is failing, but you shouldn't that shouldn't be your plan A. So just breaking down this point. Again, he serves long. This ball needs to be looped right away. So that will be going in your notes. But this ball right here needs to be looped. But you push, fine. You should have noticed by now that a lot of his loops do come cross court. And then the wrist comes up, and so the block, again, your paddle is way up. So this is the other reason, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. This is the other reason the wrist being up is really bad. With your wrist like this, it is almost impossible to block him right here and get into the backhand to backhand rally. So you're practically forced to block him to the middle or back wide to the forehand. And his loop is high enough quality to where you having to counter loop is very difficult. And so you pull it off here, but that's not a comfortable shot. You shouldn't be needing to do that just to win the point. It's just too difficult. That's fine. Now overall, your a lot of your tactics are good, which is a good problem to have because it means you just need to fix your technique and your fundamentals, and then you're going to improve really quickly. Because a lot of this is the same over and over again. You don't have enough shots in your arsenal, and you don't have enough you don't have enough quality in your serves and serve returns to get into comfortable points. You haven't had a single point this whole match where you just have a killer serve that he pops up and you smash it, or a killer serve that he pushes long to your forehand and you just rip it, or you don't have the backhand in your arsenal. So when you have a great serve that he pushes long to your backhand, you don't have the backhand loop in your arsenal to put the point away. So instead, you're forced to push, and you're forced to block, and you're forced to defend and react and play really scrappy table tennis to find points. And there's no bread and butter. There's no go-to. Like, it's really scrappy. Really, really scrappy. That has to be looped. So again, it's like the tactics in terms of getting the ball you want are there. You have a decent serve. You get a long ball to your forehand. Your job is done. That is everything you could hope for in that point. And then you decide to push. And no matter what happens from this push, you have just put yourself in a very difficult situation. If he loops, now you've got a counter loop. Why should you have to counter loop when you haven't even seen whether you can win the point from looping the third ball? Or you have to block, and then that allows him to keep looping. And then because the wrist is high on the block, it's very difficult for you to place it right here. So it's just hard. And I could give you tips on improving the counter loop, but I don't think we should be focusing on the counter loop until we've mastered the third ball loop. And then if you were at a point where you're looping the third ball and he's countering you or he's blocking you and giving you trouble, okay, now maybe we talk about more tactics and counter looping, but we're not there yet. We need again, we're putting the cart ahead of the horse here. But a lot of the fundamentals, again, here it's solid. It's not perfect. Like, you push long to the backhand, that's probably going to give you a ball you want. Now you just need to execute on that ball. That's very good. That's very good. Yeah. That's good. So we just need to work on the technique. It's fine. It's fine. Contact is good. Wrist is too high. And you didn't move your feet. So we need some more basic footwork exercises, but you should be shuffling. Should be a little bit more bend in your elbow. And then you come across your body on the shot. So you can see your paddle finishes right here instead of right here by your left eyebrow. And now there's suddenly a bend in your elbow. This is a really hard habit to break, but coming across your body really, really hinders your quality on the loop. This is really, really bad. So you want to come through the ball, not across the ball as you're playing the shot. And one way to think about it is it's never going to be exact. It's not like it should be exact to the inch, but relatively speaking, the distance between your elbow and your body should stay the same the whole shot. If you notice that when you start the shot, your elbow is very close to your body, and then when you finish, it's really far away, or vice versa, it starts really far away from your body, and then when you finish, it's like right in your body, that's a sign that you've come across the ball. And again, the wrist popping up there is also an issue. I probably don't need to watch much more. It's all, like with Nemo, it's a lot of the same. So you just have some fundamentals that you need to fix that are kind of happening over and over again. Like that's the same point I've seen 3 or 4 times now. And that's a repeat of the same point, except you landed the block that time. Great idea. Yeah. Serves need work. Your wrist is high. The forehand is a big problem right now. Your wrist comes up, you come across your body, your timing is very late, you're not moving to the ball. We need to get the forehand in good shape. The backhand is great. You're gonna be a very good backhand player. The shot, the motion is very natural for you. The backhand is very, very good once you can develop that loop. Okay, let me type notes. I'll be back. Alright, I have my notes for you. I've kept them pretty simple. I know I mentioned a lot of things during the VOD review, but there's a couple things that take huge priority over everything else, so things you need to focus on first, and then basically next match I'll look for making sure these things are fixed, and then we'll keep going and work on some more advanced stuff. But on serve returns, you need to expect long and be ready to loop, and you need to react to the short balls and or the decision to push instead of the other way around. Because you had many long serves, especially to your forehand, that would have been very easy points if you had just gone for them. You also need to spend a much, much higher portion of your practice working on serves. Make it the best part of your game. Be that guy who has killer serves. There's absolutely no shame in that. Your forehand needs a lot of work, so that is kind of the bulk of these notes. Your backhand is going to be very, very good, so I'll give you some more tips on that in the future, but firstly we've got to get this forehand under control. So firstly, you need to keep the head of your racket down. Each time I see it pop up in the next match is going to be a strike. If you get 3 strikes, I'm going to close your match and give you the same notes to keep working on this because it is that important. You also aren't going to be able to develop a counter loop at all until the wrist stays down. So we really, really need to fix this first. Second, and also very important, you do not want to come across your body on the forehand. You should be finishing by your left eyebrow, and there shouldn't be any side spin that's causing the ball to curve from your right to the left. From your left to your right. If it's curving from your left to your right, like toward the middle of the table, that's a sign that you've come across the ball, which is what you want to avoid. And then try to keep your distance between the elbow and the body as consistent as possible throughout the shot. On loops against underspin, your timing is extremely late. and the contact needs to be on the top of the bounce, not under the table. And part of this stems from a slow ready position and just not watching enough, which again I talked about quite a bit in the match review. And then kind of going off of this, it's not a huge point of concern for the time being because the stuff above is so much more important. But I want you to keep in mind what I mentioned in regard to the options you have for finding the ball instead of just hoping you guess correctly. And no matter which option you choose, whether it's expect backhand and react to forehand or just wait a little bit longer until you're certain, either or you do need to watch much more than you currently are. Because again, other than the really sloppy points where you just outright guess wrong, this along with like the lethargic ready position is sometimes why you're very late on the forehand loop against underspin. Everything else takes a back seat until the forehand is much better, and then we can keep working on other stuff. In the meantime, I'm going to type up some drills. Forgot to type them, so I'll type those and just have a snippet of those. But that's going to do it for this match review. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a big thumbs up, leave a comment for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel for more content like this, join my Discord server if you want to chat about table tennis or hang out, or submit one of your own match reviews. But again, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time.